Hello and welcome back to the Agribusiness Academy podcast. We have another exciting episode today where we're going to review a business within the food and agri-tech space and delve a little bit into some of the things that makes this company so special. We're delighted today to be joined by Leontien Hasselman, as the CEO of SIM, Supply Chain Information Management, and I also have Debora Van Zee with me here today, a lead coordinator with Agribusiness Academy. Hello to you both and welcome.
Thank you.
So I think the best thing to do would be to dive straight into the questions and find out more about SIM. Leontien, your business around the SIM database and clearinghouse. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of SIM and how these products came about?
Yeah, I can. So we will be around this year for 10 years. So we have our 10-year anniversary this year. I joined the company about 4.5 years ago. So say 9.5 years ago, it was started by my business partner, Marianne de Bock-Smit. And she started it mainly with the idea. She had 2 previous companies before in around food safety and food safety audits and certification schemes. And she actually found out that often the places where our food gets produced are not necessarily always known by retailers and brands. So she mainly worked with a lot of retailers and private label products. And her mission was to help these companies find out where their products are made and under which circumstances. So that was really the start of SIM. And in order to do that, she really thought, okay, what is necessary? Well, you need IT tooling and you need technology to do that. And you're talking about a large amount of data. But you also need the people to actually validate and verify that data. So from the start on, SIM has been kind of a technology partner for our clients. But we also do a lot of data assurance coming from supply chain.
Thank you. And Debora, if I could just ask you a quick question here, because you've been instrumental in bringing this podcast together. Well, this is a really interesting business model for you, and you've been studying it for a while now. What are the parts that make it, or that made you want to bring Leontien here to talk today?
Well, for Agribusiness Academy, I'm looking at sustainable sourcing and how technology can actually increase or improve it or make it happen. What I find interesting about SIM and is that actually didn't start with the tech people thinking, oh, we're trying to solve this, but actually by someone who says, this is a problem and I want to solve it. And what do I need for that? And technology is part of the solution. So it's kind of the other way around, and this is what I think makes it very interesting, is that they combine this technology with the expertise. That was why I wanted to know a bit more about it and how it works.
No, that's correct. So what I usually say is that we're really, our core competencies is that we make supply chains visual and we map product and ingredient chains. So we find out where products are made or under which circumstances. And once we know where the products are made from our clients, then we also assess the risks. And we're talking here about different risks. So this can be food safety, product safety, but also sustainability risk like social compliance, including working conditions, child labor, forced and bonded labor, but also animal welfare or environmental performance, climate impact. So once you know the risk, there's all kinds of evidence you can get from the supply chain to show a good performance or to show that there's no risk. So I usually say we do the work that nobody wants to do, because by now I think we mapped over 170,000 supply chains. So we know the products, we know where the ingredients comes from. And then we get all kinds of documentation, whether it's certificates or audit reports or other documentation from the supply chain. So I think we have analyzed and validated over 600,000 of audit reports alone. So we're really a data company, and that's also our mission. Our mission is to provide data that companies can report on, that they can trust, they can report on, but also that they can act on. And technology plays a huge part in that, but it's a means to an end. So that's really the philosophy of our company.
Perfect. So, and I guess what we're trying to do with the podcast as a whole is bringing real pioneers within this space. And with SIM Powerchain, you're one of the first worldwide to have implemented blockchain technology for information sharing in an existing food supply chain. Can you tell us a little bit about that innovation and how it came about?
Yeah. So, of course, in this case, the orange juice blockchain was the first really operational blockchain on an industrial scale in the Netherlands. So we put all of the orange juice, and that was the orange juice from concentrate. All of the orange juice sold in the Netherlands by Albert Heijn went through our blockchain. So why did we as a company develop the blockchain? Well, for instance, I just gave the example we do as a company. So for all of the private label products sold by Albert Heijn, we already map and visualize the supply chain. We do that for all of their products until what you call last stage of production, so where the product is really assembled. And sometimes when there's a higher risk, you go deeper into the supply chain to the first mile, or sometimes even further. It can even go into animal feed. So we already map supply chains, and then we do that already with existing technology. But one of the things that we saw is actually the next level of transparency is not, and this is what we do now, say, okay, a product is almost in store. Now let's see where that product came from and which ingredients went into a certain product. Why can we not have data travel with the product to the supply chain? So traceability, so to say. And traceability is also not something new. That's something that's already exists. We already have a legacy system, which is also a system to establish traceability. But there are some key features in blockchain technology where we said, okay, this is something that we would like to experiment with and understand what this type of technology can bring for supply chains. Because one of the issues that you often have in supply chains is that there's not a lot of trust. So the different actors are not very willing to share their data. They often have very different IT systems that are not compatible or cannot communicate with each other. So there's a disconnect there. Often they use different data definitions, and they often don't know who their partners really are. So we thought, okay, blockchain can bring some interesting information, because the information that we already had was the information on the product and the actors in the supply chain. But with the traceability system, you add also information on a batch level. So why blockchain, you would say? Because you already had a traceability system. Well, I think the best way to explain a blockchain is basically everybody in such a supply chain. So in this case, we had Albert Heijn, we had the bottler of Fresco, we had the trader and the presser and the farms of Louis Davis Company. They would all have access to the same information at the exact same time. So each product moving through a supply chain, so from the oranges being picked till the consumer buying the orange juice, all of these actors knew exactly what was happening with which batch when. And all of them would link their existing IT programs and systems to the blockchain. And beforehand, they all sit together around the table and say, we are okay with the product traveling to a supply chain if it fulfills these requirements. And these requirements are checked at every step of the blockchain and put into smart contracts. So say, if everything's on green, then the product can move through a supply chain. So it was a very interesting proposition for us to say, let's test that with a specific product that really has a lot of attention at the moment. And why actually Albert Heijn chose orange juice, that was for two reasons. One of the reasons is that the consumers really thought that orange juice from concentrate was really unhealthy. It not necessarily contained any real oranges and contained a lot of sugar or added sugar. So they wanted to tell the story about that it was actually healthy and sustainable, or at least what the story of the product was. And that it was actually grown in Brazil, hand-picked and grown with care for the environment, and fair income and labor conditions for all workers involved. So that was a story that needed to be checked, and that's something that each of those data points we translated to KPIs and put in a blockchain.
It's amazing that even with something as bleeding edge as this, the kind of which product to choose still comes from that kind of the consumer and their demands for more information about the product that they're buying. It's
yeah. So the story is really twofold. It's basically okay. It is actually healthy and tasty orange juice. You shouldn't overdo it, but it's actually there's nothing added except vitamin C, and it's really every liter of orange juice has 10 to 12 hand-picked oranges in Brazil. But on the other hand, there's also a Dutch NGO called SOMO, and also a German NGO that for the last 3 years have issued a report around I would say horrific working conditions in Brazil in the citrus belt, so really in the region where all of the oranges are picked. And there's a call every year for retailers in Germany and the Netherlands to really find out if those practices are going on for the orange juice that they sell, and to be more transparent in case this is the case, what they do about it. So this was a call that Albert Heijn has heard for 3 years, where they thought, okay, apparently it's not improving, and we actually don't know if this also is something's happening in our supply chain. So let's also, if we then experiment with blockchain technology, why don't we try to use it to improve our insight into social conditions at the first mile?
There's so much impact that this innovation can have, isn't there? Perhaps we could delve a little bit deeper into this product and some of your other innovations. And what we like to do on the podcast is to frame that within our the business model framework that we use at Agribusiness Academy. And the first one of those is value proposition. Could you maybe explain a little bit more about the value drivers for those different products, and maybe also touching on the key customers for those products?
Yeah. So our main customers are retailers in Northwestern Europe, mainly because we're based in the Netherlands, in Alkmaar, and we work with most of the Dutch food retailers. So we mainly do all of this work for their private label products, because those are the products that they are responsible for. So if they sell the branded products and there's an issue, whether it's a recall or a social issue in the supply chain, then the brand ultimately is responsible. But for any of the private label products, the retailers are responsible, and it's also their brand that is on the line. So for all of the private label products, we work for these retailers. So we work for retailers in Northwestern Europe, and we recently expanded to Germany and German-speaking Europe. Actually, also we have some clients in Switzerland and Germany, but also now in Scandinavia. And that's also where we see our growth market beyond the Netherlands. Now, of course, we are in contact with many organizations around the world, because we are in contact. The people we have working here, they together speak 17 languages, and in the early morning they have contact with the Asian market, and at the end of the day with North and South America. So we're in contact with many organizations, and what we also see is that we see our future clients as well as the large food producers and traders of the world, because they often get all the demands from the retailers and brands, and they also want to know more what's going on in their supply chain. So that's kind of the clients we are working with. And what we deliver, what our value is that we deliver them, of course, data they can trust, report on, act on, because we manage the databases for them. So for instance, all of the information around the products that they have, whether it's ingredient, nutrient, allergens, but also the product certifications, but also all of the certifications happening in the supply chain, we keep that up to date. So if a certificate is expiring, we make sure that before the expiry date, a new certificate is in the system, or we make sure to escalate to a client, and then they know what to do. So our mission is to provide data, but our vision really is that we want to help our customers understand what their buying power is. So a lot of these retailers, they have an immense buying power. And with the way that they buy, they actually have a very big impact in livelihood of people, but also in environmental conditions and performance in supply chain. So they just need to know how and when they can make a difference. So where in their supply chains are the problems, what are the problems, and what are the potential solutions. So that's really our value prop towards our customers, is to really help them understand where do the products come from and under which circumstances are they created. And if those are not in line with their policies or their strategy, what are ways to mitigate the risks or improve working conditions? And for us, it's really also the case that we want to see improvement. So not sourcing from a supplier that's not performing is not always the best result. But helping stay away from certain risks, or to have better working conditions, better working hours, less use of pesticides, any of these things is also something that we want to achieve.
And could you tell us more on the pricing model for the products, and maybe some of the challenges with adoption or gaining traction for the products?
Supplier database and a product database, and we sell them as a SaaS fee, so software as a service. And it's a cloud-based tool, so our customers pay a SaaS fee, and we maintain the system, the database for them. We don't own the data, so the data always stays in ownership of our clients. Then we have so that's one angle. That we actually have three areas of work. So one is the IT angle, and that's the software as a service that we offer. Then, of course, we have the data assurance, so the data work that we do, so collecting all of the data from the supply chain, verifying it, validating it, which basically means checking all of the certificates and all of the reports coming from the supply chain, and really doing a lot of checks. So is the scope of the product correct? Is the auditor that has given out the certification accredited to give out that certification against that standard in that area? Is that certification really registered in the database or the portal of that standard organization? So there's a whole different level of checks that our customers can have us do. And at any time they can say, oh, I want SIM, I want you to do more checks for all of our suppliers, or they can say, SIM, I want you to do more checks for only suppliers that supply shrimps from Thailand. Or they can say, SIM, I want you to stop now with all of our non-food suppliers. So it's a flexible service, and basically they pay us when we get a result. So every time we only work according to the mandate that we get. So if we have a mandate to check certain data or keep it up to date, we do it. And every time we do it, every time we have a new location or a new certification, we get paid for that result. And then we have a third pillar, so to say, of the company, and that's the consultancy, advice, and training angle. And that's very much focused on responsible sourcing. So what does responsible sourcing mean? What does responsible buying mean? What do you need to take into account if you're a buyer in the category fish or fresh fruits and vegetables or meat or any of these things? So those are the three pillars.
To dive a bit deeper into, you were telling about how you really know the supply chain. So you've mapped a lot of supply chains. You know from beginning to the end how they work very specifically for specific products. Now, of course, your main clients are retailers, and you clearly say, well, it's their buying power that can make the change. But I was wondering if maybe sometimes the most powerful player is not always the one who can make the change happen or who is willing to make the change happen. So do you also kind of reach out to other actors in a specific change to use your products, or like, for example, with the blockchain solution, or is always the retailer the start?
Good question. No, not always. I mean, that's the retailers are our clients, but yeah, like I said before, I think there's a shift also where you see producers getting more interested in this area, wanting to know where their raw materials, for instance, come from. But you also see some large traders getting more interest in this area. I think what we also see is next to food, there's also quite some interest from the sectors of cosmetics, but also of the non-food sector. So I think it's very logic that you want the food that you eat or the products that you actually eat, that you put into your body, that you want to know where they're from, and there's not any health risk, or there's not any real social issue associated with it, because it's so close to people what they eat. But I think the next level is what you, for instance, put on your body or on your face, or the cosmetics. And then after that, the clothing and textile industry is getting more and more interest in it, but also more affected by the questions from consumers about where does the cotton come from that's in this t-shirt. And then lastly, I think it's the non-food that's get into this. So to get back to your question, are we only working with retailers? No, I think there's a shift towards more food producers or producer of goods, as well as traders. A good example, for instance, is that in the blockchain project, we collaborate with, it started with Albert Heijn, but we're also collaborating, for instance, now with Refresco.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to go back as well to your the value drivers. You were talking about, if I picked it up well, there were 4 main ones. It's trust and trusted data and actionable data. Actually, so trust and actionable data. And then really, what when I hear you saying you really unburden your customers with a lot of work and hassle they have to go to otherwise. And maybe then the communication solutions you provide. So you actually make it possible to communicate to consumers what the result is of, like, for example, by the blockchain, or maybe also internally in the company by KPI dashboards. So firstly, have I gotten this right? And then secondly, what would be your main differentiating proposition as compared to competitors?
How do we make data actionable? I think that's something that we learned along the way, because in the beginning, the focus was really much on gathering a lot of data from the supply chain, collecting it all, putting it in a system, organizing it, structuring it. But that's the thing with transparency. If you're transparent about one thing, you want more transparency. You don't really go back. So there's a lot of data that we collected, but the focus has not been always on getting the data out or presenting the data in the right way. I think that's where we made a lot of improvements over the last years, where what we learned is that if you want companies to use this data that we collect for them and organize, you need to provide it in a one-pager, in a dashboard, where it's immediately clear in a very easy way with green and red, a kind of a traffic light idea of what is going well and what's not going well, where are the issues, and who needs to be contacted for these issues. So, for instance, if there's something wrong and there is not a valid certificate, or there's non-compliances that are deal breakers for certain companies, and there's a red traffic light, what is then the contact details of the contractual supplier? So we made it really kind of a sport to create dashboards that are really clear and understandable and have an actionable part to it. Okay, who needs to act? On the other side, until we started with the blockchain, all of the work we do was to provide the data to our clients. So not necessary to do the consumers. But with our blockchain solution, the Powerchain, this is the first time actually that we've also translated all of these data points and information into a story towards the consumer. So with for instance, with the orange juice Powerchain, the chain from Albert Heijn, but for instance also all of the eggs from Albert Heijn, consumers can scan a QR code or type in the egg number and see exactly who was the producer, under what circumstances had the export been produced, or have the oranges been picked, on which farms, where do the oranges come from, when have they been harvested, when are the eggs sold, things like that. And we also try to make that as understandable and visual as possible. And then to get to your second question, how are we different from our competitors? I think most of our competitors are IT companies, so they really have an IT solution, while I would say we are more of a technology partner. So we also provide technology, but our main added value is in the data that we provide. So we also sometimes do data assurance, data gathering, data assurance in other tools. So that can be tools of our customers themselves, or maybe even tools of competitors. So I think in that sense we're different. I think also the people we have working here at SIM, they are food technologists, they are environmental experts, they are sustainability experts. So it's not your average IT company, so to say.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was the last bit. What you told was what I got from the information that I studied. But it's good to hear you that I've seen it right.
So if I could maybe just pick up on one element of that. So the whole blockchain technology is going to be very interesting for a lot of our audience. Could you talk to us a little bit about the authenticity within the blockchain, particularly when some of the data is put in manually? How can you assure the authenticity of the data that's collected?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important to note that the question I always get is, will blockchain technology eliminate fraud? And it will actually not. So blockchain technology is also just a type of database technology. It's kind of a distributed ledger, but everybody has access to the same ledger. So still there could be a fraudulent certification put on the blockchain, on our Powerchain. And if it's not assured or not checked, say not verified, it's there. Then still the product can run through the blockchain and nothing happens. Only the moment somebody discovers the fraud or the fraudulent certification and shows it or improves it or changes, then everybody participating in blockchain can see what has happened in the past before, where it's gone wrong, who has done it, and who has corrected it. So I think it's more difficult to provide wrong data, but it's still a possibility. So I just want to make that clear, because it will not eliminate fraud. But I think the technologies that are there to authenticate documentation coming from supply chains in current technologies are just as good as in blockchain technologies. There's not a real difference. So that's also why we see, for instance, our added value as a company, because we authenticate and we validate a lot of the data from the supply chain. So the moment it gets entered as a digital copy of a physical product running through the supply chain, then we do certain data checks.
And Debora, this is obviously something that you've looked at a lot, as well as distributed ledgers. Do you have any follow-up questions on that, or is this?
Yeah, no, just one left. Actually, one of them was already answered, but the one I've got left is could you imagine like sensing and IoT playing a role for capturing certain data in a specific food value chain? Do you already use that, or?
No, I can definitely see that play a big role, and I think also that's one of the interesting propositions, or the interesting promises of blockchain, and something that we experienced as well. I mean, there's many things that we experience with using blockchain technology that we can do with other systems that we have as well. I think what is the interesting part, and one of the biggest learnings from from our use of blockchain technology is that it adds kind of a layer over all existing IT systems. So in this case, if we stay with the orange juice example, you have the trader, Louis Dreyfus, you have the farms, you have the processing plant, you have the harbor, you have the bottler, and you have Albert Heijn. And they all run very different IT systems. And they all have different data definitions. And they all have different ways, for instance, in how they call the badges. So the unique identification codes for badges are very different, even maybe between the same organization. So what we've done with the blockchain is use all of the data that is in their existing systems, but kind of translate it into a common data definition. And I think the interesting part was to sit around the table with all of these actors and say, okay, if this is the story you want to tell about the product, what type of data do we need to get from the supply chain? Food safety data, social compliance data, provenance data, batch-related quality data. So this information, how is it in your system? Okay, now we only put that part in the blockchain where we say this is correct, this has been checked, and that translates into this batch numbers from you, translates into this batch number from you. So all of these actors can use their own systems, whether they have highly advanced ERP systems with all kinds of modules, or whether they have built their own Access database or just upload something in Excel. That is all still possible. So blockchain adds this layer, and I think that's also the interesting promise with blockchain, because, for instance, take the example of Albert Heijn. Now, it's frozen concentrated orange juice. That's a commodity that was tracked through the supply chain. It means that this commodity needs to stay frozen during its whole journey from Brazil to the Netherlands. Albert Heijn actually doesn't need to own all of the data of the sensors to make sure that frozen concentrated orange juice has stayed frozen all the time. The only thing they want to know, if it doesn't stay frozen, they just want to get an alert. And this is where blockchain can come in very handy, because IoT can collect all of this information, but just if it fulfills certain requirements in the smart contract or it doesn't, that's when all the partners get notified. So I think it helps make these large pockets of data that are now in silos in supply chain, how to unlock them, to make sure that the product is of good quality and can actually justify the story that it's telling. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely does. Yeah, thank you for that.
I'm conscious that you could both talk about blockchain and IoT and all of these elements for hours on end, I'm sure. But I need to get through our business model pillars, so I shall move the conversation on. Could we take a look at distribution? Could you tell us, Leontien, a little bit about SIM's core distribution strategy and maybe some of the international aspirations, or maybe you've spoken a little bit about what you're doing in other countries, but do you see potential for going further afield?
I think our distribution strategy is that we have to build a distribution strategy. I think up until now we've grown through personal relations and contacts. So, for instance, we have a non-existing marketing or communication department. We just really have grown through word of mouth and recommendations from customers that are already using us. And I think we're now growing to the next level where we're working on our communications and marketing strategy and seeing what type of channels we need to kind of be active in, and what type of European conferences and initiatives we need to be part of. So I think we've grown quite organically until now, and I think now it's time for a next step.
Yeah, and I guess that's the beauty of working within a kind of startup, scale-up type mentality, is that you can spend this time getting your products right and making sure that they're completely effective, and then the next stage is how you actually get them out there and get people using those. And maybe this question will slightly play into that. When we talk about our business model pillars, we look at complementary partnerships and chain commitment. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe partnerships you have that are going to ensure scale for SIM, or maybe those that you need to create and are looking to develop?
Yeah, I think we're very much, our whole organization is driven around knowledge. So knowledge of supply chain, knowledge of what type of products have what type of supply chain that involves what type of risks. So what type of activities need to happen by different actors in supply chain towards a product. So it's really our whole core is around knowledge. And in that sense, we have also long-standing partnerships and consult organizations like the Consumer Good Forum on, for instance, the Global Food Safety Initiative, or we also consulting for the Sustainable Supply Chain Initiative on the Consumer Good Forum. That's where all the large brands and retailers in the world are part of. And that's where we do a lot of the benchmarking work between food safety standards or social standards. But for instance, we also collaborate with IFS, also the food safety standards, to develop their a new standards around fraud and product fraud. And we also collaborate, for instance, with ITC, the International Trade Center. So there's a lot of kind of knowledge and consultancy work specifically that we do that helps us grow, because it gives us a lot of access to potential clients. And so a lot of our acquisition and sales also comes through our third pillar of work.
Thank you. And the final area of the business model framework that we like to look at is sustainability and the sustainable elements that the companies we talk to on this podcast contribute to. Could you talk to us a little bit about the key sustainability elements that your solution and your product contributes to?
I think one of the things what we're currently doing, because our whole mission is driven from a sustainability perspective. So we also have, for instance, part of our profits go to our own foundation, where we help youth in the Netherlands between say 14 and 24 that need some additional support because of nobody else is helping them. So that's something that we really do, but our whole drive, what we want to aim for, is to enhance sustainable development. So one thing that we're also currently pursuing is to become a B Corporation. I don't know if you... Yeah. So that's also another way for us to really ensure that we have that we stay true to our sustainability focus and our sustainability added value that we want to bring. Now that's very important for us. So we're currently in the process of becoming a B Corp. I think that will happen in the coming months. And I don't know if there's more you want me to tell about that.
Well, if I may, Tom, I think well, in our model, the sustainability elements, we put it in because from our studies of businesses and successful businesses, it came apparent that the ones that are successful really have sustainability at the core of their business. So this is why we always ask this. Now, like said before, and what's clear from our whole conversation is that maybe to summarize, the belief that buying power can drive positive change is really core to your existence, as I've understood. And I think this clear purpose statement, combined with the right partnerships and your domain-specific knowledge, I think, and also on the ground experience, I think that makes your case very credible and very strong. So yes, I think from my perspective, you've got companies that kind of put some sustainability sauce over their business model to make it look sustainable or add something, and I think with you, that's not the case. It's really core to what you're doing. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's also something that we try to, we always try to ask ourselves what's sustainable growth as an organization, because we grow quite a bit, but it's not the only aim to grow. It should also be in a sustainable way for the business, I mean. So as we see it, both Marianne and myself, we run the business, we're in it for the long run. So it's very different from companies that might be focused on quarterly results, because for us that's not the core aim. And that, of course, and it's a private-owned company. We're the owners of it, so we can set those rules, which of course helps if you want to set up a sustainable business.
I'm wondering if you see any sustainability issues related to your core business. So to your own operations that might become material in the short or medium term, which you think, oh, we have to address this, maybe in your route to becoming a B Corp?
No, actually, what I think from becoming a B Corp, actually, I think it's going to be quite easy for us, because that's the way the organization has been set up. But maybe devil's in a detail, and maybe the last part will be difficult. But so far, that's been quite relatively easy for us. I think what we will need to do, and what should be the focus, and actually want to make that the focus of this year, 2019, is to, of course, we collect a lot of data, for instance, on social compliance from the supply chain about the performance of suppliers, which reflects the performance of that very moment. But I think what the real interest lies in is also a lot of these efforts from all of these supply chain partners. What is the measurement of improvement? So how can you not only see performance, but also see performance over time? And what does improvement or growth means, for instance, on sustainability or social compliance level? And I think that is something that is our focus for this year, to really find that out and to expand our services so that our customers can really have an insight in that. I don't know if that's answering your question, but I think in terms
yeah, definitely, it's an interesting.
It's one thing to be certified and to collect an audit report, but then you need to actually measure what happens in the next half year or the year after, and does all of these sustainability policies around responsible buying have an effect, and what kind of effect? And does that mean that there needs to be longer term contracts or longer term partnerships, or different ways in looking to supply chains? What about the middleman or the in-between man, should they go out of these supply chains? So I think there's still a lot of work to be done on responsible sourcing, or actually understanding what's the impact of it, and what works and what doesn't work.
Well, that's very interesting, because I'm also wondering then, I don't know if you do that, or you can do that, like can you combine the data of the different customers in an anonymous way to analyze what's happening, or would you say maybe A, it's not possible because of trust issues, or B, it's not even comparable between the different supply chains?
No, it is comparable, but unfortunately I cannot not anonymously benchmark that data or put that data together. I wish I could. I always say that's like a goal, but no, because we're not the owners of the data, so our clients
no.
The data. So, but I wish I could.
So a final question, Leontien, that we like to ask all of our guests is about talent. This is obviously Agribusiness Academy's core product or solution. So we like to have it as part of our discussion. So if I could just kind of quickly ask you, and I know you've spoken a little bit about the marketing and communication side, so perhaps some of this answer is there, but how important do you see talent within the scaling of your solutions, your products, and maybe talking to us a little bit about your approach to new hires or current talent?
Well, I think talent is everything. I think organization itself are nothing but legal documents. In the end, it's the people that make up the organization. And I think it's always so inspiring to see that different people bring different skills and capacities and inspiration to organizations. So especially to a small organization like ours, where 40 plus people, every individual joining the company can bring something new to the company, and new ideas get executed and become products or services. So I think talent is very important, especially because if you think about the field we work in is quite broad, because you can everything from environmental experts to IT to blockchain experts, sustainability experts to data experts to business intelligence experts. But you cannot hire everybody. So I think having talented people is really important and is what makes an organization stand out and grow. I think it's very difficult to find good talent. On the other hand, like I said, we don't do much on marketing and communication, so people don't know that we exist also because we don't have the direct link to, for instance, consumers. So we're a B2B brand. We have been very under the radar. Lately that has changed a bit because we're working on our communication. We have an intern now working on communication, and we just started working with a communication marketing agency, so that might help a bit. What we see also now more that we've been asked to speak at universities. Just this week I've been in Edinburgh speaking for the Edinburgh Business School, and then you get a lot of interesting proposals for theses, postdoc theses, MBAs about people with specific ideas. So that's very nice, but it's a constant search for talent also for us, and especially in the IT support, that's very difficult. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely, and something that we kind of constantly see within our clients and within the companies we talk to is also that kind of, with tech talent, it's also about having that connection to the end user. So they're trained to understand technology and computers, and actually sometimes you can forget the orange grower in Brazil. That kind of connection to the end user and what the problem you're trying to solve.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree.
It's nice that you kind of concur with our thoughts on talent, and thank you for that answer and for all of your answers. I'm conscious that we've taken up an hour of your time, and we like to respect that. So thank you so much for joining us. Debora, thank you for your questions and insights as well. And Leontien, how can people find out more about the business or about you?
Best way is to follow SIM Supply Chain Information Management on LinkedIn, or myself, Leontien Hasselman, or go to the website www.simsupplychain.com, all one word. And thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. I hope it was helpful. I hope it gave you some insight. So thank you for the opportunity. Absolutely,
yeah. This is first part of your communication strategy. We're putting it in place. you can tell the world.
Yeah, that's always good.
So thank you very much, and to our audience, we shall see you on the next podcast.